G'day, everyone. Good morning, Western Australia and Australia. Good evening, America. I am here in San Antonio, Texas. I am having a Lone Star beer tonight. I have a lot to get through. So it's Friday night here, in case people are wondering why am I drinking at 8:30 in the morning in WA, although I think I'll need a drink or two to get me through this live stream tonight. Good morning, little Aussie rockets from Queensland, Australia. Please, if you're tuning in, put your questions, comments. I have a lot of questions from the people. I'll be here to answer all of them tonight. So please like, share, subscribe, all of those things, and I will get to your questions throughout this live stream. So pop your questions in the chat. Yes, I am here in San Antonio, Texas, in the land of the free, the home of the brave. It has been quite the few months for me, and finally the moment I know all my friends and family back home in Australia have been waiting for, especially in my home state of Western Australia. This gun law fight, this gunfight that we have found ourselves in. It has been a lot for everybody, and I thank everyone for your support and patience. I will address some things tonight throughout the stream. I did have massive problems with good old Facebook not letting me stream to their platform at this time. So, not sure about all this free speech stuff that they say that they are. So I'm only on my YouTube channel and X tonight, unfortunately, and Instagram. I think I got that working. I don't think I boom at Instagram, but Facebook, bloody hell, has been a pain for me. So, like I said, a lot to get through. If you've been following this journey since I started it back in January, it has been a long journey, but we have finally gotten what I set out to achieve back in January from my dad's gun room when I decided to go down this road of legal action against Western Australia's gun laws. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you've never seen me before, I am Kate Fantanell, or Lady Liberty Australia as I go by. I'm a proud gun rights activist from Australia, living in America, Texas now, over here for work with Mr. Liberty. It's been quite an experience moving countries. Complete life change, but it had to happen. It was getting very difficult living in Australia. If you're here listening in America, a lot of Americans are aware of the trajectory that Australia is on, my generation and younger. The possibilities of owning a house in our home country anymore is just so far out of reach. I've been following on X. A lot of other Australians are leaving to all parts of the world. I was blessed enough to get a visa to work here in America, a country that I just absolutely love, share your values of liberty. That's why I am here. So, hard decision to make, leaving my family, of course, my dad. I miss him every day that I am here, and I have still been fighting the good fight back in my home state of Western Australia, despite what other people have been saying. So, the big thing to get through tonight is the letter of opinion from our King's Council. This is what I set out to achieve with the fundraiser and this campaign, because prior to all of this, we were flying blind. So, Western Australia overhauled their entire gun legislation and regulations. They kicked that off back in March 2022 by doxing us on the front page of the Wank Australian newspaper. I put up a post last night because we are reliving these similar scenes in a new way with the firearms portal being hacked. And I did warn them. I put up a post last night. I said this back when they first flouted the idea through that discussion paper that this would happen. I said it again in my submission to the review. This has been one of the big things as a civil libertarian that I have been concerned about, is protecting highly sensitive private information from anyone. So the government proved they could not be trusted back in March 2022 with the data in the firearms registry at the time, giving it to the press, who then printed that map on the front page of that newspaper there. So we are now seeing in July. Are we in July? Yes, July 2025. Our data has now once again been compromised by the state. It is now in the hands of who? We do not know who hacked the system. We know it's been paused, whatever that means. Everyone yesterday was rightfully up in arms, figuratively, about this because the new database contains GPS locations of where our safes are. That's the level of detail they are going into now in Western Australia with the gun laws and how they're regulating us. The GPS locations of our safes, photographs of our safes, photographs of the firearms stored in that safe, all on this digital database, along with our home addresses, our photographic ID. All of that data has already been compromised into the new laws. This is where we're at in Western Australia. So my lawyers, yesterday, I instructed them that we need to write to the police minister and police commissioner about this specific incident, the fact that our private information has now once again been compromised when they were warned as well. So I have instructed my lawyers. We are working on something at the moment. Those who remember that front page doxing incident, I put up a post yesterday. I apologize. Some people did contact me saying that it's quite triggering for them and it's showing the data, spreading it. It's already out there on the internet, but I do apologize if people were upset by that image. I can't stand that bloody image, but I just thought, here it is, it's happening again. So that's why I used that image. But we are now in the position where we do not know who has this data that we had to hand over as part of the rollout of these new laws. This is what they wanted us to do. So if you had complied, I know, thankfully, a lot of people couldn't even log into the bloody portal to begin with. It has already been played with technical issues. So I would hope that those technical issues weren't someone already trying to hack the system and they kept it going until it got to the point where it had to be shut down. But once again, I hope our politicians and our few comrades in the Western Australian Parliament will be asking questions about this. This cannot be business as usual in WA. Who has the data with the GPS locations of our guns that you put us in this position? The state government did this to us again. You cannot get up and say these laws are about public safety when you have just put public safety at risk because this information is now in the hands of who? It is obscene that this is where we are in Western Australia in July 2025. It just, the mind boggles. So my lawyers are onto it. I had a conversation with them last night, my time, your morning. I'm working on Western Australian time. So I still feel like I'm there. I wish I was there on the ground, but I'm here living this through the phone, through the emails, through the constant work that I've been doing ever since I left and found myself here in San Antonio with finally a roof over my head, not living on the road anymore, thankfully. So my lawyers are onto it. I will say, back when that doxing incident happened in March 2022, there was uproar at the time, breach of privacy. Can someone go to the lawyers and ask, have they broken any laws in regards to private information? Now, back then, Western Australia, and this is what I said at the time, Western Australia has no state-based privacy legislation. And from my understanding of the laws, I'm not a lawyer, but I've had the pleasure of reading so many bloody acts, regulations across the years during my time at SSAA National. I had to know every firearm act and regulation across the country, along with what federal control. So this is my bread and butter. There was no state-based privacy legislation back when that doxing event occurred. So the federal privacy laws, they were found not to be in breach, and that is my understanding. I know people are still asking questions, legitimate questions about that. Now, the WA government has since written Firearms Privacy and Responsible Person Sharing Act laws of 2024. So if those of you who were not aware that there are new laws coming in on the books in WA. There is a matter of what is in operation. We've seen with the Firearms Act, some parts are still not operation yet. The government rolls these things out. We are looking at what parts of the new privacy laws are in effect, if any. And we are also looking at if anything has been breached from the privacy section. But I did say to my lawyers, if the whole point of this bloody exercise, these gun laws, the biggest reform of the biggest laws in the books in Western Australia, and the whole way it was conducted, the way that we were treated, the leadership or lack of leadership and incompetence by our leaders in fighting back against the government in this space, the biggest loss to gun rights since 1996. Who would have thought we could lose even more than we had left after 1996, which is where my passion comes from? We are now in this position. So that's the update in relation to the hack. If you have been affected, once again, I am not a lawyer. I have to put that disclaimer across. It looks a bit ridiculous, but these are the times in which I live and we live. If you have been affected, if you had uploaded data to that database, and if you have received or if you haven't received anything from Waypol about that yet, please follow up, try and see if they will answer your questions. If you've been affected, ask the question, well, who has my data now? What exactly do they have? You, I believe, have a right to know that. That's your private information. Where the bloody hell is it? You put us in this position. What happens now? What am I going to do? And the whole irony in all of this, the sick irony in all of this, is if someone does come to your house and breaks in and steals your firearms, you have no legal right to defend yourself using those firearms or any other tool. It is obscene. When I tell Americans that we have no right to defend our lives with lethal or non lethal means, I'm talking about pepper spray here, nor do we have actual castle doctrine, not this wishy-washy, watered-down stuff that some political parties back in Australia talk about, that I am in a state in Texas where I have the legal right to defend my life, defend my property. And that's one of the reasons I accepted the job here in this state, because it aligns with my values and outlook on life. We are not afforded those liberties back in Australia. And this is an example where the government has put the lives and safety of the public at risk because of their handling of our private data. So we are asking the questions through the legal process. Once again, getting a letter written up to serve to the police commissioner and police minister specifically about this issue. That's why I'm talking about it so much tonight, because it only happened yesterday. In the meantime, I'm sure there will be political pressure on this. I saw Dr. Brian Walker once again championing the cause. I'm sure as a civil libertarian, he would be wild about this infringement and exactly what they're doing here. So we need to keep the pressure on. If you do think you've been affected, please ask the question and feel free to send any information on to me. I am operating. I'm getting back through the emails. This is the other thing I will just take the chance to apologize for, is not being able to respond to every single person who has contacted me. I am one person. I took this on because no one else did. I was considering running for office at the time against Police Minister Paul Papalia, who has thankfully been moved out of that position. Maybe there is a God after all. But I decided to go down this path as a client to get this legal advice from a King's Counsel who, honestly, after reading this and the back and forth and the information and conversations I've had, you need a King's Counsel when you are going to this level and when you have these kind of laws that we've never seen before. Some of the things written into this have never been used anywhere across Australia. So to have a King's Counsel sit down, look at all of this, analyse across the country all the legislation that they have relevant to this as well. What are we dealing with? It really was the right option to go with the King's Counsel. And I thank the lawyers. I spoke to multiple lawyers before I went down this road, and they all agreed that you need to get the best KC that you can in Western Australia. And I did, and I do have the best KC in Western Australia, and I cannot thank him, Jason McLaurin SC, enough for his dedication and commitment to this case. It did take longer than we all expected, and we all apologise for that. Ben Dickens as well, who's been leading this case as my lawyer, cannot thank him enough. Their professionalism, their dedication, they are on our side. They understand why we feel so aggrieved, and having people that actually understand and want to listen to firearm owners in the first place. It's very hard to engage lawyers. Courage is a thing that seems to be missing across most industries, political, the justice system too. So to find courageous, competent men to lead this case in WA on behalf of the people with me as the client, we are in the best position now. And we apologise for it taking so long. One of the reasons it did blow out, the deadlines that I gave were pushed back quite a few times, is because the scope of this work just expanded. It just blew up. After I met the lawyers after the state election on the 10th of March, I went in there with just enough money to pay for the first bit, just enough. That the advice that I've received, totaling 90 pages, I've been told that some letters of opinions are 2 to 3, maybe 10 to 15. This is what I've been told from other lawyers. I don't just speak to my lawyers. You have to make sure you have second opinions when it comes to this kind of fight. So to get a 90-page document that went through the legislation and regulations, things that I identified initially, the things that you provided with me, the questions that you asked me, everything that we have had to endure to ask the KC to look at this through the legal system, through the justice system. How can we fight this according to your side of town? I come from a political and media background, so it has been a baptism of fire with working with the legal profession. Thankfully, I have the right people in this position helping me and helping us. So it has blown out. It has expanded. The costs have also blown out too. I will put that there. When I say blown out, I'm not saying it's unmanageable at this stage. But the reality is, if anyone's ever had to work with engage with lawyers for anything, they cost money. They cost money. And that's why I was so shocked and surprised by some of the things that have been said about me in relation to this whole thing. Legal action that hasn't delivered any legal action. While serving letters to the police commissioner and police minister, of which we have served 3 now. 3. The first one was about the compensation scheme, if we all remember, back on March 31st, when push-button release firearms and lever actions above 5 rounds were suddenly banned on December 23 in the regulations of 2024. Merry Christmas to those gun owners. I remember reading an email from a young bloke who just bought his first push-button release firearm to help his dad on the farm. No compensation available to him. Just destroys a person's whole everything he's saved up for. I mean, is that really the goal of government to be doing that? Anyway, that's another conversation. But this is where we were at on March 31st. And this is the first thing I raised with the lawyers, was the compensation without just compensation issue. Can the state legally coerce people into voluntarily surrendering private property without getting just compensation for what it is worth according to market value? Can they actually do that? Is that the world we're living in Australia in 2025? And if it starts with firearms, where does it end? That is the first question I asked when I met with the lawyers back in March. And that is the first thing we wrote urgently back then to the new Police Minister, Reece Whitby, specifically about this whole class of people who own these firearms are left empty-pocketed because of the decisions of your former police minister. For whatever reasons he decided to do that to us. One can only come up with theories, but this is the way that we were treated. So that was reopened following us, my legal team, sending the letter saying, what's going on here? This is how people are feeling. Are you going to open it? People need compensation. So that was the first thing. Since then, of course, it has just grown into a massive moving beast. So, following that first meeting, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place, but I just want people to understand the gravity and size of what we have been dealing with these past few months, really since January when I started this campaign. Because back then I had read through the regulations. You might remember I did a live stream with Aussie Reviews from Queensland on bloody Christmas Eve, because that's how dedicated we are and passionate we are about this fight. I've been across everything since March 2022 when this started, because I was in Western Australia. That's why I ran for the Senate in May 2022 on Give Gun Owners a Fair Go. Called out Police Minister Paul Papalia specifically about this issue. That's when that started for me, along with my years of experience working for SSAA National and Senator David Leyonhjelm, of course, as well. So it's been a long fight. I might just take a moment for a drink. I'll have a look through the comments. Let's have a look. Good morning. Good morning, Australia. Good evening, America. Boomering the technology. Okay, what have we got? Matthew Morgan, go hard. We've sadly already lost in New Zealand. I've got a cousin in New Zealand in Taranaki. I've been talking to him quite a bit. He's dying to come over and visit me here in Texas. I thought things weren't looking too bad with ACT in power there and Nicole McKee as your police minister, but I might have lost track of what's happening over there. There's lots happening here in the United States too. I've been following that. I'm excited to meet with some of the gun groups here. I've got that planned for next month. So there's so much happening. This fight is a global fight. That's for sure. Um, Boomering this already, Mr. Liberty. Oh, thanks, Dave. The sane and normal, intelligent people don't need any apologies, Kate. We know how complicated this must be for you. Thanks, Dave. I think I have the reason why I'm upset, not so much upset anymore, but the burden that I felt letting people down because of how long this has taken, that really weighed on me. And I took on this responsibility as the client. I signed the contract. I went into this willingly because no one else was doing it. But I felt that that was my duty. But I'm still, look, this has been a baptism of fire working with the justice system. I 100% support them. They are competent, they are courageous men. It is not a matter of, there is nothing sinister was going on, why it took longer. It was just the scope of this project and this work. Honestly, going through these new laws, regulations, going back and forth, providing them more information that you sent me, it has been a lot. And over here in America, interestingly, the gun groups here have dedicated teams of lawyers and media professionals that their job is to go to court whenever a gun law comes up, any state, federally, straight to court. This is what they use here in the United States to move gun laws when the political solution fails. Of course, they have lobbying. Of course, they wine and dine with politicians and support the parties and candidates. Of course, they do all of that, and there's money involved too. But the organization and power of the legal team and the communications team as well, professionals fighting back against the laws here. And then I look at my little team of Ben, Jason, and I, and the other lawyers that have helped along the way. It's honestly unbelievable that we've achieved as much as we have. So let us go to, and thanks if you are just joining. Maka, I've just seen your comment. My dad is 80, had to hand in his guns. He bought them the day he turned 18. Once again, this is something, and I can't give legal advice, but keep your receipts, photos of the things that you had to hand in. If you didn't get proper compensation as well, keep all the receipts. this is something that we are really looking at, which leads me to my next point. Which leads me to my next point in relation to the gun limits and the buyback. Everyone knows I hate using that word, but if I say confiscation without just compensation, people will get sick of hearing that phrase. But that's essentially what it is. And I explained before that the Commonwealth laws in relation to. Did I explain that? I don't think I did. I'll go back and explain that. I'm just going to have a drink. So, like I was saying before, the first issue that I felt we needed to challenge, and was the advice provided to me by you, the people, was this confiscation without just compensation scheme. I'm going to say it again. I can't use the word buyback. And I told my lawyers off for using that word, so I shouldn't use it. Naughty. So we have already written, this is the first thing. I had meetings, I've had 2 teleconferences with the lawyers since they've delivered this gigantic, here it is here. I don't want to do the Epstein folder reveal thing, but this is the letter of opinion, substantial document. So the first thing that we decided to do as a matter of urgency on behalf of the people, and yes, all of these letters cost money to send and write that I pay the bills for. The first thing we have asked is in relation to how the bloody hell they came up with those figures for this compensation scheme. Because going back to 1996, the Commonwealth government, the clause in the Constitution, right? This is something that we were all talking about. And I said, my view, again, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of the situation is, and was back then, that the Commonwealth, the section of the Constitution, I've got my little Australian Constitution here, the relevant section in relation to acquiring private property and just compensation being paid for that acquisition of private property, e.g., in 1996 when they changed the gun laws and had the compensation scheme, which was fair market value and in some cases exceeded market value. Some people got more money for their guns than they paid for them back in 1996. The Commonwealth government had a table of about 320 different firearm types. It wasn't just this rudimentary list that someone in all their wisdom in the government or bureaucracy came up with to only pay according to the action of the firearm, pistol, rifle, shotgun, and how long it had been registered in WA. Not the age of the firearm. That's one thing that I want to make clear as well. The table, when it says 6 years or more or 6 years or less, is not in relation to the age of the firearm. It's in relation to when it was registered in the state. In my submission to the review, I have said this is not a just compensation scheme because firearms are not valued on when they were registered in any jurisdiction. It's an irrelevant factor. So why have you come up with a table that's, we can't find it anywhere in the Act or the regs? This is what's written. The KC has diligently gone through and said, well, where did they get this table from? Where it doesn't add up to what happened in history. They don't have to abide by that clause in the Constitution, is the answer that I thought and turns out to be true, which is why you would have seen in my post, it is not recommended we go to a High Court constitutional challenge in relation to the compensation scheme, because this is the nature of government in Australia, that it does not apply to the states. The way the Constitution is written, there are things that specifically say what applies to the state and territory governments. In this particular case, if you read it, it doesn't specify. And so that's how they've gotten around it in WA. That does not mean it is fair or just, because it is not. You have confiscated private property off of the people, not compensated them according to its true worth. We need information on how you came up with that. the decision maker behind that, and how it's been applied. That is something we have already written to the Minister and Commissioner about, requesting this information. We have done it as gentlemen. They don't have to reply, but if they don't, we have options to compel. I know my lawyers are probably screaming at me saying, "You've lived in America too long, stop using that language." But my disclaimer says I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is my interpretation of the conversations I've had and reading through the documents. So this is where we're at in terms of the challenging the buyback, is getting the information to see how they came up with this, because how they came up with this can be scrutinized through the legal process. So we have written to them about that already. The other thing that's part of this letter is in relation to the destruction of the firearms that were handed in the first scheme that were blown up in the desert on the September 11 last year. We all remember those disgusting images. Now, I went back and read through the Hansard. That's something that I've been doing as part of all of this work, is looking at what the Parliament, the questions through the Parliament, what our politicians did. I have a good understanding from my connections with our allies in Parliament. I went back and had a look through all the questions that were asked about firearms in the last Parliament and this Parliament. There were questions asked at the time about why the government thought it was a good idea to load up 30,000 odd firearms that they claimed were handed back, take them out to an undisclosed location in our state, use our taxpayers' money to buy explosives, to then blow them up while the media helicopters were flying around filming it, with God knows how many operational staff on the ground, and who knows if they even cleaned up the site. I mean, just another day in WA, isn't it really? So this is another question we have put in this letter that we have already served to the Minister and Commissioner. And I hope they've read it, because otherwise they'll be getting a shock hearing it from me. We have asked about the decisions in regards to this, because this is not what they did back in 1996. They used crushers to destroy the firearms. We all remember those images, as haunting as they may be. The government in this state, in WA in this case, decided to use explosive to blow up our private property that they did not even pay us proper market value for. I just need to have a moment. So we have asked about that, and one thing I did point out to my lawyers from reading the Hansard is they have now written into WAPOL's procedures that it is normal procedure and operational for them to use explosive to do this. No, well, you can't. Seriously. Once again, who made that decision? Why you think that's a good idea? They were asked in Parliament about where was it, how much did it cost, and they hid behind operational matters as if they're the military invading some country. No, this is our private property you took from us and didn't pay for it. You can't hide behind that. You're meant to represent us. There's a thing called transparency. So we've asked them for that information as part of this letter. And I'm very interested to see what they've said. We have also asked for a ceasefire on destroying any more firearms that have been handed in since the compensation scheme was reopened. Because are you going to do it again, is basically what we're saying. I wrote in my submission, and I know my mate Jack Carmody did too, that we hope we never see images like that on Western Australian soil again. I mean, I thought it was actually quite threatening, and I had other people say that to me as well. Like, what a show of force by the state. Look what we can do. Look what you can't. um, the optics and you can't let governments get away with this repeatedly. You just can't. It has to be a point where we all just say, is this a joke now? Is this how we get treated? Like, please, for the love of God, this is a legitimate activity. These are legitimate tools. We are not the criminals. And we've proven to be trustworthy persons since 96, living under these gun laws, and now you've made it harder for us. No. So that's another thing that we have asked, and the legality of that destruction. The lawyers were just, you have to. So we've requested that immediate moratorium on destruction, request for disclosure of the information I've just said. And if they don't give it to us, we can go to court and request it through that process. So that is where we're at with the compensations, challenging the compensation scheme, and also making sure they do not blow up any guns like we just heard someone's dad had to hand theirs in. We do not want him to see them blown up on national TV when we are trying to fight this. So I'll have a look at through some questions. Happy Saturday morning in Australia. It is Friday night here in Texas. I'm having some Lone Star beers. Taste a bit like, what did we say? VB? Carlton Draft. Yeah, so not bad, not terrible. I like the Shiner box. They are a nice drop. Shooter Down Under. Oh, g'day, Shooter Down Under. Just call it the steel back rolls of this tongue more easily. That is for sure. Josh Coffey, I have a custom built rifle that cost me $6,000 to build. I don't take shooting lightly. It is a big part of my life. These laws are geared to destroy a big part of my life. That's why I am trying to do everything I can to fight back against this through the legal system, because it's and I've written this in my review, my submission to this ongoing review. I should talk about that now as well. I've said, I'll just read some of it because I'm not sure if I'll get an invitation to present, but I said, although we are a minority group, firearms in Western Australia are a part of our culture, traditions, and daily life. As the largest state, Western Australia faces unique challenges in controlling feral and pest species in inaccessible and harsh terrains. Firearms have widely been used as accepted as a necessary and efficient tool in protecting our native wildlife and landscape from the destruction that these animals inflict. Firearms are also a vital piece of equipment for those who, like me, embrace the competitive nature, discipline, and skill of sport shooting. The precision sport of shooting is one of the only activities that is truly inclusive for people of any ability, gender, or age. And I've written some other things there that I will post this submission once the committee have published on their website. That is how they requested things go. So I'm respecting their, at this point in time anyway. So there is, I will get into some more of the things the advice says in a minute as well, but just to also put in context what else is happening in WA in relation to the gun laws, we have the Committee on Legislation, which is a committee with members from the Legislative Council, which is the upper house. They are currently reviewing the Firearms Act. I'm sure a lot of people saw that advertised. I wrote a submission. I just read out a bit then. It's a 16-page submission, goes through the big issues and answered their questions about that. So that is going on at the moment. We'll see. It's interesting that I've done some videos on this. This was a motion by Honourable Nick Garand from the Liberal Party, of course. Dr. Brian Walker also said he would support a review prior to being elected, so it's got through the numbers in the upper house. The Greens came out and supported it too because of their concerns with their impact on management of animals. They have, the Greens, for the record, have acknowledged firearms are an important part in managing pest and feral animals. That was always part of what they believed. You've had different people come into that party over the years that try and change it according to their ideological views, which is something I've seen firsthand in other parties. But the Greens have typically been accepting that there is a place in society for firearm ownership, specifically when it comes to this kind of thing. And they were horrified to learn that some of the bans and restrictions have put people in a position where they don't have access to the correct tool or caliber to humanely manage the animal and feral pest problem that we do have in Western Australia. So they are concerned about that. So this review is ongoing. I have written to them. They are meant to report back by the end of August. It is not unusual for these reviews to get pushed out. I just want to talk about this because the advice that I have gotten from the KC, the 90 pages of advice, is based on the current Act and regulations. So if through the review period, the government and the members, there will definitely be, I predict, motions to amend things in either the Act, well, they have to amend things through the Parliament with the Act. There might be suggestions to change the regs, which can be done administratively. In other words, it doesn't need to go to the Parliament for a vote. They can acknowledge that that's been recommended by the review and decide to do that or not. Any other amendments to the Act must go through the Houses of Parliament. We could potentially see out of this review, I suspect we will see suggestions about what should be changed. This is it's not really an issue, but it's something to keep in mind, because if things change, the advice will change, and it's also a matter of timing. This is the other thing I'm been talking with the lawyers about. When do we file? When do we go to court? When do we pull this lever? When do we pull this trigger on the options available to us? And we are watching what's happening in the Parliament very closely, especially this review, especially if anything else happens in the meantime. It's a moving beast. It seemed to change almost weekly. So we are keeping an eye on that. I just want people to be aware. The good news is if the laws change because of the review or whatever happens in the Parliament in the meantime, I do have that KC who I can ask for information in relation to what they change it to, in case, heaven forbid, it's something worse or something sounds a bit more off. We have the option to go back to him and say, well, what about these laws that they've just brought in? What do you think? If it comes to that, that's always an option on the table. In other words, we can ask for supplementary advice on top of what we already have. So that's where we are at in relation to the review going on. I feel like I'm babbling away, but there's a lot that I haven't done a live stream for a while. And the only people I've been able to talk about this is Mr. Liberty and my lawyers and my dad sometimes when I get the chance to talk to him. So I feel like I'm just telling everyone everything that I've been working through the last 6 months. Dave, last comment from you this morning. Shooting is an Olympic sport and a huge part of West Australian culture. It was a big part in our Anzacs being top shelf marksmen. Yes. And that is something that we need to remind our politicians. I mean, I remember back, I think it was before the Boer War, they let out wild boars in across the top end, and that was a way people went out to train how to hunt. My dad told me that story. I don't think it was a boar, maybe before World War One. I'm mixing up my history here, but this has been a part of our culture. Is we are marksmen, we are hunters, hunter gatherers, we are shooters. We love the competitive nature of sport. This is a legitimate activity. We need to get away from the stigma of firearms and what that means. And the politicians have done a great job stigmatizing our community and our sport. And there's probably a conversation to be had about how we've presented ourselves to the public, if we even have had any campaigns to change the Australian psyche when it comes to firearms. I think a lot of work needs to be done in that space. So we're not a scary group or seen as people who just cowboys who want guns. So we need to tell our story. Shooting down under. I'm from out of state, and since my license is not recognized by WA, I have to apply for a temporary license. But it's gone from difficult to outright impossible for me to get one. Yes, well, this is what happened to me when I moved to WA. They did not recognize my. I had A, B, and H license from South Australia. No, didn't recognize it. Made me go through the entire handgun licensing process again, including the mandatory shoots, supervised, tethered, even though I've won pistol championships with my little 22 Browning Buck Mark. in WA that my prior learning was not recognised, and they made me go through that. But it's just, if that is the role of government, it is dumb. It is just dumb. So I'm sorry that you're having that problem. Shoot it down under. Okay, let me get through some more of what the KC said because it's a lot. Okay. So I will say what the advice does not recommend at this time is the class action. Now, this is something that we spoke about, and it was part of the initial discussions with the lawyers back in January. Even we talked about going down this road. The class action laws in WA are new. Jason McLaurin SC, our King's Counsel, is the only one who's led a class action under those laws, and he won. Another reason I went with him in case we did go down this road. Now, it's at this time and for legal reasons. So, class action have specific requirements on how that is set up through the courts. I've got the details on that in the advice, all the mumbo jumbo legalese. But at this time, that does not mean that we can't go down this road later. Once we get the information back about the compensation scheme, how they came up with the prices, all of this stuff, it does not mean that that's not on the table down the track. I will say very clearly, class actions are expensive, more money than I can even imagine. So that is something to keep in mind. If anyone has any questions about that, I did have people through the emails say they'd be interested in joining class action. If you're one of those people, keep all the receipts and stuff. That will be important for challenging the compensation scheme through other ways anyway. But class action at this time, not yet. The other thing I mentioned before, the High Court constitutional challenge in relation to the compensation scheme, because we have other avenues available. And I think from memory, that's what the other fundraiser set out to do. Because of that clause in the Constitution, it's great that other people went to find out if that was a legal avenue. And once again, asking these kinds of questions to lawyers like King's Counsel costs a lot of money, which is why it's important to support causes that go down this path. But at this point in time, we are using other ways to challenge it, and we can't challenge it through the High Court because they are not in breach of the Australian Constitution, which is a conversation I think we should really have as a country. If the states can get away with doing this kind of thing, bye property rights. Okay, the other things that the King's Counsel has said as identified as angles of attack. So this was in my post the other day. Expanded fit and proper person test. Now, this is the other thing that I went wild about when I saw it come out in that bloody discussion paper back in 2023, I think it was now, was that they, in Western Australia, if you don't know, they have expanded the fit and proper person test so that they can consider someone's views, attitudes, and opinions when assessing if they should have the privilege of a firearms license. Now, because it is so ambiguous, that's why I also brought it up with the lawyers, because what definitions mean a lot. So who is going to be the person who assesses the views, attitudes, and opinion? I know as part of the mandatory health checks, the Firearm Authority health assessment, and a required appointment with a GP, they have been instructed to observe temperament at the appointment. Perhaps that could fit into this. If you make any comments, they're told, write it down. If you happen to mutter something about how ridiculous this all is, write it down. This is weaponizing someone's opinions. Well, it says views, attitudes, and opinions against them. which is a suppression of free speech, which is also a suppression of political communication. If they use, if that is what they are referring to. So the problem we all have is, well, we don't know what the hell that means. And I asked back in that discussion paper, are you going to be looking at our Facebook pages? So if someone's posted a meme about the former police minister, well, you think that's a bad attitude because I don't agree with him, so I can't have a license. Like, what does this mean in the real world? In the real world. So that is definitely something we are looking at, as we should, because this is a free speech issue. A bureaucrat should not be given the right to decide if we can have a gun or not based on this test when you haven't even detailed what this test even looks at. We are flying blind. I don't know. Am I going to watch what I say now because I don't know if my attitude is going to take my guns off me? Like, you cannot put the people in a position where we don't know if we're breaching the laws because you haven't explained what this actually means. So this is something we are definitely looking at. If anyone has any questions about that. There's also, from memory, there's stuff in there about a person's way of living in relation to fit and proper person tests. Once again, what does that mean? I asked this back in the discussion paper. Are you talking about someone who lives in a caravan or someone who's homeless or of no fixed address? Like, what are you talking about here? Or way of living? They live alone, they're a bachelor and a recluse. I don't know. We just don't know. And this is the role of lawyers, is to come in and say, well, how are we going to operate as a society when we don't actually know what your laws mean? So this is why you need to get them onto it. So that's something we are definitely looking at. Hello, if you are tuning in. Good morning, Australia. It's evening here in San Antonio. This is my special live stream about the King's Council's Advice Legal Action Challenge in my home state of Western Australia. I miss WA so much. As much as I love Texas, I miss the beaches in WA. I miss my family and my friends and my community. All the shooters and hunters and people have supported me. I have offered to come back to present to this review committee. I have strongly asked for an invitation. So if I do come back to present at that, I will let everybody know. As long as you don't hang me in the streets like some of you threatened on Facebook. Okay, moving on to another big issue all of these seem to be big issues because some of the things I've included in these laws in WA will keep you up at night, as they have me, and I know a lot of people. So the limits on the number of hunters per property. This has been another big issue that a lot of people have contacted me about, rightly so. For those who don't know, in WA now, the state government has given themselves the power to decide how many people we can have come onto our own private land to conduct shooting and hunting activities. And they have come up with some whiz bang formula that they're assessing it in a certain way based on the size of your land and a few other things. And then the state will prescribe to you as the landowner how many people you can have and what calibers of guns and what firearm types that they can use on your property. And they've limited the number to 7, I think it is, or depending on the size of your property, but 7 is about the number that you can have. Obscene. And I remember doing interviews with people in this fight in WA who raised that as an issue and just said, this is not how we in regional communities, like Jack Carmody said, this is not how we operate. We don't want to log on to a Landgate portal, which could be hacked, upload our information about the size of our property, pest density problem, all of this stuff. We don't want to have another steps in all of the things we do as landowners to keep the economy going, to keep the food supply going, we do not have the time, nor the patience, nor the technology, nor the trust in your technology to be going down this path just so we can have volunteer hunters come out and help us do the tasks that we simply don't have time for. This is the position they've put us in Western Australia, completely trampling all over the culture growing up in regional Australia. I'm from regional South Australia. It was common for people to go knock on the farmer's door and say, "Do you need a hand with culling foxes this Saturday night? I'm happy to help." That if you cannot do that anymore, if you have to go through this bureaucracy and this approval thing just to be able to conduct activities and manage your own land. No, no. So that is a question that we have asked, and that is something that the KC has gone into in his advice. So that is an option that we are looking at challenging as well. I will say, because this is quite an extensive list, that I do not have all the funds to fund all of these fights. I think people really need to understand this. I am so grateful, and so relieved that I raised more money than I set out to, because the cost of this advice has cost more than the original fundraiser because of just how bloody big it is. And that's fair enough. People should be paid for their work. You've looked at the biggest laws and regs on the books in WA, real meaty stuff. I mean, gun laws in Australia, in WA, which is why I was happy to be the client, because I can understand what the bloody hell they're talking about. Section this or the outdoor, regular, administrative or delegated. Like, I can keep up with them because of my background and all of this. And thank God we had that funding, because we have sent 3 letters now, and those letters come with the price as well. The emails, the phone calls, the correspondence, every time they open a document I send, that all adds up. This is how it works. So what I am saying, we have the options to challenge here. There needs to be a conversation about what we do next. I've told you we're already collecting the information and serving the letters about the compensation scheme, how they came up with the numbers. What are they doing with the guns now? Do not blow them up. I've already paid for that. I sent that off. Apologize if I'm running this my own way, but this is a position. I have to make decisions. I do not have time to sit on Facebook and listen to some of the things people are saying about me, or get caught up in defamation case against this or someone like no, I have been focused on the legal action that I started back in January, despite everything that has been said about me in the meantime. Legal action that hasn't delivered legal action. Look what I'm sitting on. It's just, but this is what happens when you get in the fight, because we are challenging gun laws in Australia. And we are not coming from a position of sympathy. And the media have a field day whenever, anytime guns come up. This is what we are up against. But I did not think that I should have been crucified the way that I had been, especially when it came from that publication that started the attacks on me. And everyone knows who I'm talking about here. But I have been focused on what I set out to do, which is get the legal advice on the gun laws, when other organisations wouldn't, when some of them were even saying there are no options to challenge it through the courts, it's a waste of time. Well, how can you make that conclusion? That's fine. Everyone has a right to an opinion. If that's your opinion, if you spoke to your old mate who was a lawyer 10 years ago or now is retired, that's an opinion. The only opinion that counts is the one that you get written by a SC and a legal team, and who are competent and deliver it to you in writing. That's the only way you can have a legitimate opinion on the gun laws. I'm sorry. Everything else, you're wasting my time. I don't have time for that. I've gone out and gotten this advice when you didn't want to, when I asked you to help, when you're sitting on more money than I could ever dream of raising. You didn't do it. I did it, and this is how you treat me. This is a culture of the shooting organisations in Australia. What can I say? After my years of dedication and hard work for them, this is how they treat someone. And all because what? I've relocated to Texas with the best gun laws in the world. I may or may not have an AR-15 sitting behind me. Can you see it in the shot? No. This is I'm allowed to have a life too and follow my dreams and and have a future and have a job where I'm respected and live in a country that aligns with mine and still do the job that you still are not doing for the people. So just had to get that off my chest because there needs to be a discussion about how we fight this because we have ways to fight this. We've already started the fight, already sent off these letters. We can go to court with urgent injunctive relief if we need to. That's the other part of all of this is we've asked for a ceasefire while the review takes place. That is what the e-petition is asking that Dave's put up with Dr. Brian Walker tabling it mid-August from memory. I hope everyone signed that. That petition specifically asked for while the review is taking place. Ceasefire. There's problems with your laws, otherwise you wouldn't have sent it to review. You're getting hammered with legal letters from Lady Liberty and her KC. You have to keep the pressure on. This is how you do it. Going out for lunch with the Nationals is not really achieving anything still. You have to keep the pressure on through the legal system and through things like petitions. So that's going before Parliament very soon as well. But there has to be a conversation and people should think about, I do have things to fund. I'm funding this letter. I've got money allocated to things that we are looking at. We're still working out the timing. As I said, that's the other thing with all of this is a battlefield. When do you make a move? When do you hold off? When do you go this way instead of that way? It's honestly a strategy, which is why I haven't just uploaded all of the advice on the internet and given it to the hands of the state solicitor's office, which is the commie army of lawyers who are wondering, well, what are the issues with the laws? Well, I've got the issues with the laws right here, written by a KC from WA. And I can tell you what I've revealed publicly and what I haven't revealed publicly because we can fight back. This is what we're sitting on here. But the money that this will cost is something people need to think about. And I can say, I am aware that there is a new shooting organisation being established in Western Australia. I know my friend Mark from Mark and Sam is involved. Fantastic. He's honestly, WA is lucky to have him. So I've already said to them, you need to take on legal action as part of your activities as a new shooting organisation because this is what was missing the last 4 years and before that, which is why we ended up in this diabolical situation that we are now in, which we have managed to wind back considering where we were before the election. We had our backs against the wall. We were not in a good place. So I have already said to them, strongly suggested that legal action campaigns like this needs to be a part of the functions of any new organisation, any new shooting organisation in Australia. I don't care if it's WA or nationally. You need to have a team of lawyers, not necessarily a KC on the books all the time, but on retainer for sure. For sure, that is something that I have learned through this process. And it's what the organizations do here in the United States. It is not left to one individual to fundraise money from her dad's gun room while she's traveling around, fighting while she can, while figuring out her life and getting a place where I can finally work professionally and live again. It should not be left up to one individual who then gets treated the way that she did, by the way, to fight this. I am more than happy to keep leading this for you, but I know that I'm not there. I will come back whenever I can. Like I said for that review, the lawyers have already said if we need you to come back because we're running to court, we need to do a big media thing. I'm happy to be there and be the front person for that. I wasn't coming back to speak to Ben Harvey and say, well, here's the receipts for the lawyers and all the emails I've sent, so I'm not sure why you're saying I'm not doing legal action. All I've been bloody doing since I got to America is legal action on top of my new job, on top of trying to start my life again in a new country, far away from home and my dad. I'm not, no. So there needs to be this new organization, whoever is in charge needs to take on legal action and use the money that they have raised to fight back. Do not come to me asking for money. You're sitting on $120,000 now for a new organization. What are you using those funds for if it's not part of it is not legal action? Administrative funds do not, you're not wasting 120K on administrative funds for a new organization. Legal action, this is what the people want. This is what I've proven that they wanted. It cannot fall onto me, especially the way that you've treated me. You want to be the leader? You want to be the big boy in town? Take legal action, fund it yourself, and do it. Because I will continue to do what I can with the funds that I have, and we have a lot that we are already doing, but the resources I have are finite. I do not know if I want to be fundraising again after everything this has put me through, including the fact that it risks my work visa here with some people contacting my boss here, and you know who you are, trying to paint me as what I've done back home, threatening my work visa here in America. This is what the men in the establishment do to me. I just want people to know that this is the position that I have been put in because of my dedication and fight in this matter. So just wanted to get that off my chest. The other things that the KC has identified as an angle of attack is the expanded disqualified persons list. So if you're looking at that going, what the bloody hell does that mean? Welcome to the world of legalese. So with the new laws, the government have expanded the number of people that will automatically be ineligible or disqualified from owning or applying for a firearms license. And they have picked some laws from different parts of the Act, including the Misuse of Drugs Act from memory, where if a person is convicted of a crime under these various criminal acts, including the Misuse of Drug Acts from memory, if the crime that you were charged with carries a minimum penalty of 5 years jail, then you can never own a firearm in WA. That's what they've decided. So this is all about proportionality, I would say. And once again, this is not legal advice. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. This is just what my recollection of this issue, because it's one that the lawyers were also interested in as well. I framed it to them because I see it as a way of tightening the noose on the number of people that can own firearms in WA. In other words, if you shrink the net of the number of people who can have firearms to begin with, then you're achieving your ultimate goal, which is what they said, reduce the number of legal firearms in the community. That's what they set out to do at the start of all of this, need I remind you. And they've used this measure, these laws, to do that. So we are looking at whether that's proportional. There's also other things that come into examining how we go about challenging that. But I have been contacted by some people who have been a firearms license holder in WA for years, and they have been charged with something that's come up under this, and I've got the letter saying you can't own a gun anymore, too bad. Can't get your money back through it properly. So they're sitting there going, I've been a law-abiding person for, since it happened, reformed. This is also the other problem. If someone has done the time for the crime that they committed, then why are they being repunished years later because of the new laws? So this is a legitimate question that the lawyers also agree should be discussed. So just wanted to put that out there too. So storage requirements is also another one. These bloody 10 mil safes. We are looking at that too. That is also a matter of timing. The other thing I would say in relation to all of this is this isn't the final list. There are other things outside of this. about ways we can challenge things in different ways, not specific to a specific issue. I'm going through the specific issues because I know that's what people are most interested in. There are other ways you can challenge things through the legal system when you look at not just a specific area of the law. So that's something that we're also having a good, deep discussions about late at night when I should be asleep for work the next day, but that's okay. So I think just reading through my notes again, I've got stuff everywhere. Okay, and the other thing I will point out that I did point out in my post the other day, but if you didn't see it, the other reason I haven't uploaded this document to the World Wide Web is because I would then waive client privilege, and this would get in the hands of the enemy. I do not want that to happen. So that is something I discussed with them from the start. And from their perspective as well as mine, strategically, you don't go and give the commies your war plan for fighting back their bloody commie gun laws. Like, it's just absurd. So I have not distributed this to anyone. There's only 3 people that have it, the KC, my lawyer, and myself. We are the only ones who have been privy to this 90-page document and will be the only ones privy to this 90-page document. I haven't even sent it to my dad. I do not want this getting out anywhere. I cannot afford this after everything we have been through to get ourselves in this position, to have the advice from a King's Counsel, who's the only one qualified to talk about this at that level, with Ben Dickens, of course, who's just been phenomenal in his work on this too. We are protective of this. We want to do what's best for the people and we want to win. That is why I'm sharing as much as I can with you verbally, which of course is not legal advice. So let me go through the questions. If you are in the chat, thank you for joining me this Saturday morning in WA. This will be available to watch after. I'll clip it into the relevant parts too to make it more digestible for people. We are living in a short-term memory world when it comes to social media, so I'll do what I can to get this information out. Please, please, please share this. If you're someone who's donated or you know someone who's been following this, help me get this out. I'm a small account, independent, not funded by any organization or anyone. This is just me doing this for the love of my people. So if you can get this message out against the propaganda that I've been dealing with, any way that you can, please help me spread the good word of how to fight WA's gun law. So I'll go through the questions. I've been going for about an hour, 15 minutes. It feels good to be back. I said to Mr. Liberty the other day, God, I miss doing live streams from my dad's gun room. I know it wasn't a very professional setting and some of the audio issues, and I finally have this beautiful studio here in San Antonio that I use as part of my new job too. But I do miss my little live streams from wherever I used to be. It was a wild way of living, but you got to settle down eventually. All right, let's have a look. So, Peg's Place. Who's the judge of good and proper person to own guns when they give them to police, security guards, etc., etc.? Good point. I did cheekily point out in my submission to the review committee that they brought in mandatory activities that we have to now complete, similar to the handgun requirements. As you know, if you've ever owned a handgun, you have to shoot 6 times a year and an additional 4 times a year if you own more than one handgun. So they've brought in mandatory requirements in WA for long arms now too. And I said, well, the Western Australian police do not even have mandatory number of activities they have to do for firearms, but they can open carry in public. So good question. Michael, is there going to be an injunction to suspend the new laws until the Legislative Council review is complete? That is a option. That is an option on the table. So good question too. So we have written, as I said before, we've written to the Commissioner and Police Minister specifically about the buyback and not blowing up our guns again, please, for the love of God, asking for information. under a standing order that they've put in there. We have also asked that because there is a review going on, we've called for the ceasefire on any precipitous action taken against we the people while this review takes place. If we have found that they do go and enforce aspects of the act or the regs that we are looking at challenging, which we have written to them about, and we have another 2 or 3 letters from memory in the works to send out. We are bombarding them with these legal threats to say we're getting ready to do this and this and this. In the meantime, if something happens and we need to pull the trigger on an urgent injunction, we can. We can go to the Supreme Court and we can do that. So we are watching, as I said before, when we pull the trigger on things, timing, that's something we are in constant communication about as things change, as they continue to do so in this space. But good question. It is an option. It is quite a bit of money. I just want people to know that as well. I have the funds to pay for this, but I'm hoping to use the limited resources I have wisely. But if we have to go down that road, we can, and I'm in a position to do that. So good question. Dave again, yeah, blowing up the said firearms was indeed a passive-aggressive move by the powers that be for sure. How is that the best way to dispose of anything? Exactly. And it wasn't standard operating procedures. They wrote that into their new procedures. Well, I haven't actually seen it, but that's what they're claiming. So it is not a responsible way of destroying private property, especially when you put in the fact that you didn't even pay us the money that these were worth and you've just used how much of our taxpayers' money to blow them up. I mean, the gall of these politicians, we can't keep letting them get away with this. Oh. I don't know what happened there. Shooter Down Under. Right now, I'm hoping that you succeed with the lawsuit, not just because of the gun laws, but also because of all the critics, so that they are forced to eat their own words. Well, I think one thing this has shown, and that's why I said before with any new shooting organization or the existing ones, I mean, if they want to mobilize and start going down legal action road like they do here in the United States of America. I mean, I saw just this week Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, and some of the other big gun groups here have all joined together to challenge the NFA, which is the federal firearm laws here in the United States. They have unified their forces, their money, their people to all come under the same banner, and they're going down the path of trying to overthrow the NFA here in the United States. Why were the organizations back in WA not forming together and going down this road when it was clear a political solution failed, or wasn't? You cannot only have one bullet in the chamber. You can't operate like that. So getting the advice and saying that there are issues, showing that there are issues with the laws and ways that we can challenge them through the courts, which is the question we were all asking. We now have that information, and the answer is resoundingly yes. Yes, there are multiple things we can challenge, multiple avenues we can take. At the moment, like I said, bombarding them with letters saying, well, show us the docs on this, show us the docs on that. If we didn't have this available to us, we would only have the Parliament. And I suppose we don't even really have the media because we don't get favourable media coverage. So we only have our few friends in Parliament who can really help us. Well, now we have a small team of competent, committed, professional, the best lawyers in WA working on this with me. We have really moved things already. I don't think anyone can say that this has had no impact. No one can say that. And if you do, well, what did you do? If you say, I didn't have an impact, well, what have you done? Oh, Pete J, hello from WA. How is it in WA? My sister said it's very cold there at the moment. I do not miss Perth winters, although it's only cold for about a month anyway, and then it's sunny days the rest of the year. I am hoping to get back for this review. I have a lot to say, not dribble. Hi, Kate Bruce here from Victoria. How's things in bloody Victoria? Doesn't seem to be going that well from what I see on X. Poor Victoria. So Grant Bowen has said in Western Australia there is castle law. So what is your definition of castle law? Now I sound like a bloody lawyer. Thanks, Jason and Ben. So castle doctrine in its pure form refers to the ability to defend your property with any means necessary, which includes firearms. That is the true definition of castle law. Also, when it comes to self-defense, you have the right to defend your life with any means necessary. They have that here in Texas, where I am. That's one of the reasons I moved here, is because I've been put in situations in my life where I couldn't defend myself despite having the means and ability to. The law wouldn't allow me to fight back in that manner. Here, I have that right. And I thank God every day for Americans defending the Second Amendment, because without that and without the First Amendment free speech, well, as we can see with WA laws, if we don't have free speech, we have nothing. Okay, no further questions, it seems. I'm sure I've missed some things. I am working on a bit more of a detailed explanation on this as well, um, just so I can share as much as I can through any medium that I can. I'm conscious of the fact that a lot of people donated a lot of money to this to get this advice. So I want people to be able to know what we're looking at. I've summarized the big things that we're doing at the moment, those letters that have already gone off. If you missed the part about the WA firearms portal being hacked, we are already in the process of looking if that has breached privacy laws, with new privacy laws on the books now in Western Australia. We are looking at that right now as we speak. And then I will have further teleconferences with the lawyers the next few weeks as well, as I continue to work through them through this, the next phase of our legal action challenge, which is hammering them with letters at the moment, asking them for the docs, asking the questions that need to be asked. What have we got here? Another question. Martin, basically it's a losing battle. If those who think that they are the ones who are going to win some dispensation because they are talking to the right people, I'm sorry, you're mistaken. We all lose. I don't really know what to say to that. I mean, I'm pulling the levers and using the things that I can to try and change this. I've gone down the justice road this time because there was no political solution in WA. It was impossible to claw back the parliament after the big swings against the whatever we have of freedom parties left in Australia, the McGowan election. So I feel that we had to go down this road. I don't think we're all lost or anything yet. That's we can't think like that. If I thought like that, I wouldn't still be here, sitting here talking about all the things that we can do to challenge it. And we do have ways to challenge it. That's what the justice system is here for. We have to use them. And that requires fundraising and competent people working with the lawyers to do that. So I hope the new organisation takes this on, please. Thanks. Straya says, thanks to King hit laws, wouldn't every threat of violence be a threat of death, thus making fatal response proportional? That is true. Because I had the unfortunate experience of going through this equal force stuff when an incident that happened to me. I was told by the lawyers back then that it's if someone picks up a cricket bat, then you can pick up a cricket bat. If someone punches you in the face, you can punch them in the face. To which I said, well, if a bloke punches me in the face and I punch them in the face, it's not really proportional because, anyway, it's just ridiculous that we have these caveats on ourselves that we have to think when we're in a position where our life is threatened, our family is threatened, our home is threatened, our possessions are threatened, that we have to think, oh, can I legally respond in this manner or will I be the one ending up on trial? We should not be put in that position to begin with. It should be clear cut castle doctrine in its original form. You can defend your castle, your property, and yourself with any means necessary, full stop. No black and white. That's it. That's how I think. I think law should be as simple as possible so that people know what the bloody hell we can and can't do. And as we've seen with the WA gun laws, we don't know what the hell we can and can't do in some of the laws. So I think I am going to wrap up now because it is getting late here in Texas. But thank you for joining me for this special legal action, long awaited update with the advice from the KC that I can share at this time. I'm sure I will be doing more. As I said, we've got other legal letters uh, going out next week. We have a plan, we have a strategy, we have levers we can pull in the event we need to go to court for that urgent injunction, like Michael asked about. That is an option. We are watching what's going on with the review. We're watching what happens next if there's any movement at all. I am in constant communications with the legal team. I'm available all the time for them to talk to, as they know. So I will keep doing what I can from my side, keep working hard prosecuting this. And thank you to everyone who has supported me. I cannot thank you enough. I'm sad that I've lost a bit of support and trust because of the propaganda and the attacks against me that are quite frankly unfounded. I mean, I wouldn't even have this advice if I hadn't paid the lawyers' bills and if I don't continue to pay the bills. So the allegation that I've run off to San Antonio with all the money and I'm not actually doing legal action is patently false. And I have had advice from lawyers that say I could pursue it, but I'm not at this time because I'm pursuing this fight for gun rights in WA, which is what I always set out to do. Thank you again for joining me. Please like, subscribe, share, let everyone know this is out there. Apologize for the weird time doing it. And I hope to speak to you all soon. Thank you.